Hey listeners, it's Mallory Wilsey, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to take just a moment to tell you about another show on Enrollify that I know you'll love. The Hidden Gem is a new show hosted by Maya Demishkovich, CMO at Carroll Community College. This podcast is dedicated to empowering community college presidents, leaders, and marketing and communication professionals with the knowledge and insights that you need to harness the full potential of strategic marketing and communications within your institution. New episodes drop every other Monday, and you can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search for The Hidden Gem wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the Hired Geek Podcast, where we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell, Community Engagement Lead at Pathify. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology. The Hired Geek Podcast is a proud member of the Enrollify Podcast Network, a robust collection of shows designed to help higher education professionals like you grow every day. Explore all of our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast. This one, I'll be trying to tackle head-on the fast-changing world of higher education when it comes to various aspects of kind of the enrollment management admissions space, FAFSA rollout, Supreme Court decisions. Certainly, there are just sort of these big kind of seismic shifts that I think are kind of reshaping higher ed enrollment management strategies. So we have brought on someone to kind of just help us navigate all that. Greg from EducationDynamics, if you want to introduce yourself, background, and a little bit about what EducationDynamics does.
Sure. Thank you, Dustin. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Greg Clayton. Again, I'm president of the Managed Services Division that we call Enrollment Management Services at EducationDynamics, which includes our performance marketing, enrollment management, consulting, and research practices. And, myself, I'm 30 years in higher education, more on the ed tech side than anything else. I am a lifelong learner myself. I'm an adult learner market geek and very passionate about learner journeys and also learner outcomes. And to answer your question about EducationDynamics and what we do at a high level for our services include a full suite of agency marketing services like paid search, paid social media, awareness marketing, SEO, and organic, marketing automation services, and all the creative that goes behind that in terms of the service, all with a performance marketing oriented approach in terms of how we work with our partners. Also, enrollment management services that I mentioned, that involves recruitment services, retention and persistence oriented services, and financial aid services as well. And we have a consulting arm that does strategic consulting services in marketing and enrollment management, as well as enrollment management staff development and training, which is a big topic right now, especially tied to some of the things that you mentioned, and also CRM journey mapping work with our partners. And we also have a research arm that does primary and secondary research. And I'll add that our business model is strictly fee-for-service. So we are a consultative type of player in terms of how we think about our partners. When we first start having conversations, it's about what problems we're trying to solve, what are the goals and objectives that we have, what resources do we have to work with together, and then we fill in the gaps with our fee-for-service model.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. And I know I kind of got initially clued into you all and kind of big fans of the research reports that you put out regularly. So I feel like for myself and many others, thank you so much for doing that work. I think it's very informative. That idea of institutions are grappling with a lot right now. And it's always just like, you know what? two heads are better than one. Like, we've been kind of maybe like just spinning our wheels here. Very much could appreciate certainly folks that have a perspective on the entire kind of landscape, like, nationwide, and recognizing those trend lines versus maybe just like basing things off like anecdotes or just kind of like what's happening in your neck of the woods. It's like you just do kind of have to work, I think, in somewhat of at least kind of tacit acknowledgement of what is happening nationwide. Certainly when it comes to stuff like FAFSA rollouts and changes and Supreme Court decisions and all that, like we're all just sort of beholden to those kind of things. So, I guess there's so much going on, and I don't want to like focus in on one thing because I feel like it's going to like then just change in a few months. So just like there's just been a lot of disruptions happening. Just to kind of zero in on this, obviously, it's like you said, like these institutions are trying to grapple with all these changes. So they're certainly looking to partners like yourself. But like, when maybe you're having these conversations, like what do you make of the impact that kind of the confluence of all these things happening at once are having on institutions and students, and just like how everyone's trying to navigate this moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you said it well with kind of framing the question around there's so many things happening. I think things going on with the department, changes to regulations, changes to rules, and not just the Department of Ed, but also other federal agencies that are making changes that are impacting work that is done even in higher ed. Likely all with good intentions, but there's a lot of things happening at the same time for institutions in higher ed to try and process. And not just institutions, the students that they serve as well are impacted by all these things. So there's so many things going on. I don't know, wouldn't even know how to prioritize them now in terms of the impact that they're having, but everything from the changes in the Dear Colleague letter that were kind of floated about a year ago by the Department of Ed, and how that really, and that what I'm talking about there is potential changes to the OPM model in higher ed of revenue share versus fee for service that I mentioned is our model at EducationDynamics. But what that did to the industry and kind of sent it sideways into thinking about, the construct that has been in place for 10 years or more, maybe changing, and how our institutions and service providers and all of the tech providers that are serving higher ed, how are they all going to deal with it? And that's one thing. That is a noisy thing to try to navigate and process, for the companies and the institutions. And now you have, matters like, the recent Supreme Court decision that you mentioned earlier, and then the FAFSA rollout, and all of these things are happening at the same time. And it is putting a major amount of stress on institutions. Just take the FAFSA situation for a minute. The stress level of enrollment management professionals and institutions and financial aid professionals and institutions was already high. It was high going into the pandemic. Pandemic made the pressure and so forth even worse. And staffing problems are, kind of creeping in as institutions are trying to bring people back into the office and everything. And now you layer in a FAFSA delay and challenge on top of that. There's just stress all over the place with it.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe like the core of my question. Yeah, it's like it's hard to like say, oh, one is more important than the other, or having more of an impact than another. Like it really could depend on like just the day of the week, or what institution or what person you're talking to. Because the financial aid person is going to be like, oh, the FAFSA, it's like totally changing everything, the rollout. And I guess like the core of it for me is that like I'm sure all of these teams, they're wishing and hoping for just a level of like predictability, like it's just that idea that they're going to plan their staffing or their budgets or this or that around sort of expectation of like this is how it's going to be based on how it was before or whatever. So like, do you feel like that's just part of it? It's just like expectations have continually been sort of just like the rug has just been ripped out from people around like I think some institutions maybe were making a calculated bet around like how the Supreme Court would decide or whatever else. But like, I guess it's just that idea of like predictability has just been thrown out the window for a lot of teams.
Yeah, I would agree. There's an increased level of uncertainty for institutions, think about it if, a lot of students are delaying decision through this FAFSA situation alone. And, for institutions that are dependent on tuition for their, cash flow viability and their existence, just being able to predict the impact of this on that is very difficult to do right now. And it's just another thing entered into the equation, an unintended consequence of all of the things that are happening with FAFSA. And then uncertainty is never good for students either. And it's sending students into different directions, either to delay, or students that were maybe ready to apply or ready to enroll, struggling with the complexity of all of this, are going to delay, may never come back. In the adult market, the more friction that is put up for students to get through the process, because 58% of them are employed full-time and have a lot of other obligations, they will just forget it. They'll move on to something else in their priority set.
Yeah. And that's what I think is like, because you're saying, you're lifelong learner and like all these sort of things. Like what I think is kind of funny and that's different is that like traditionally, you keep working in the field, you get kind of farther away from like, lived experiences of the students that you're serving and everything. But then it's just that idea of like, there's at least kind of the commonality of like, okay, myself or you or whatever, we're choosing to engage in some sort of educational experience. You kind of know it's like, well, I've got all these other priorities and all these other sort of things. And that idea of like, you hit friction, ambiguity, those kind of things. It's like, I'll just go to the next, like, like especially somebody who knows better, like, and understanding of somebody like doesn't have a level of understanding of like all the different educational options and different things that I do. Like, yeah, you're definitely going to lose them. Like I have maybe a little bit more patience than a normal person because I work in the space and like know, kind of how the sausage is made. But yeah, like that's the idea of like, you want, that level of predictability. You want just a level of clarity and simplicity and all of that, because there's so many people out there, so many adult learners just earnestly trying to, pursue a credential. Yeah, certainly any of these things aren't helping and maybe have like less of an outsized impact if you're like, going for like a graduate degree and all that, like, financial aid from, taking the FAFSA and everything. It's a little bit different, or just how like admissions works at that kind of stage. But but yeah, I mean, it's even just that idea of like institutions are maybe going to have to put more time and energy and resources and like kind of get lopsided on just having to like try to address one side of their admissions process and then be perhaps neglectful of the other or something. It's like, oh, we got to staff up more over here because things are like getting, sort of overwhelmed versus like, other spaces. So the other big headline is upcoming election. Just the idea of like that sort of big, that's like a big variable coming up, that like there would just be a completely new administration potentially, where I guess sometimes like depending on what the election looks like, it's like we know for sure we're going to get a whole new administration, but like this was like, well, it could be the status quo, it could be something different. We don't know. It's not like, do you see moments in time like this also kind of like disrupting the space at all? And I guess that would be much more maybe on like the institutional leader level of how that they might choose to like invest resources or like take any sort of risks or anything. Like, do you see any of that, like the election having an impact?
Yeah, I think kind of connected to what we were just talking about, more uncertainty. If if the administration were to change the other party, then what does that do to everything? Some of the things that we just spoke about, sort of leading to uncertainty or having uncertainty on the market right now. And then, if there's status quo, what does that mean? How far will things continue to go along the regulatory side that are already causing we talked about too much at the same time? Is there going to be more of that? So there is a lot of unpredictability with that. And I think, there's so much noise in the headlines, just in political matters that are far away from matters of higher ed and education in general. So, I think there's a ton of uncertainty and even speculation in it. And I can't even predict, what it could look like, either way. I think, and I can tell you what I I would love to see in a perfect world, and in my own opinion, I don't know if it's even possible anymore, but that, if the both parties were to think about, higher ed and matters of education, there's definitely some opportunity here. There was a Gallup study, I think last fall, that was released. It showed serious decline in public perception of value of the higher education credential. So the value of the degree. A lot has been written and spoken about on that. And, the question in my mind is, why is this happening? It was high at a point in time not too long ago, and it's declined very, very quickly. And I just cannot imagine how this is good for our future, that perception exists. Putting some serious thinking in both parties around addressing this question and how to restore confidence in higher ed should certainly be part of the conversation. And, we talk a lot about in higher ed with our partners and everything. It really comes into play with adult learners. They are looking for outcomes, when they're making decisions, because there's a cost involved, not just time, but also money, for them as well. And as I mentioned earlier, they're working full time. So, affordability and outcomes should both be things that some serious thinking are done about. And through a non-political lens would be the perfect world. And what I mean by that is, not trying to define the winners and losers or the good guys and bad guys in the whole conversation by the tax status of an institution, but instead just a positive, better construct, thinking about it through the lens of outcomes, that students and employers that hire them are looking for.
Hey, it's Mallory. Exciting news. I'm hosting the Engage Summit in Raleigh on June 25th and 26th, and I'd love to meet you there. Together, we'll dive into the mind of the modern student, what fires them up, how they interact, and what they expect in today's digital age, and how tools like AI help put them in the driver's seat of their education. We have some terrific speakers, including our closing keynote, New York Times best-selling author Jeff Selingo. Sessions will dig into practical ideas and innovative strategies to get your team more student-centered and ready to adopt AI. And many of your favorite Enrollify hosts are presenting too, like Jamie Hunt, Jenny Lee Fowler, and Brian Gross. Use the discount code Enrollify50 for an extra $50 off your registration. Learn more and register at engage.element451.com. We can't wait to see you there.
You started to see kind of the moving of levers in the direction of apprenticeships and different things, in kind of working in that, workforce development kind of sandbox and stuff. So I think in lieu of and I heard this the other day of that there's just still this long overdue renewal of the Higher Education Act and everything. That could be a really big move in a way that sort of is just sort of affirmative of, this is the way that we view higher education in 2024, what it should look like, the outcomes it should be achieving, the way it should, hopefully operate and really try to kind of thread that needle around, not kind of vilifying necessarily one type of institution versus another or whatever else. We are certainly seeing that shorter form credentials and programs, the adoption of those by students is going up and all that. And I think it's an idea of a very pricey, multi-year long commitment has its place, but not as the sole option for somebody to enable, economic mobility in their life. That's something that I want to kind of keep, advocating for, is certainly just a diversity of options when it comes to sort of post-secondary education, so that there's hopefully more kind of easy, quicker, cheaper on-ramps that hopefully may lead eventually towards a degree, but then also there's sort of a fluidity around modality, if it's in person or online or hybrid and those sort of things. So yeah, that, I think all of this to say this sort of disruptions and ambiguity and unpredictability and all that, hopefully it could sort of the pendulum could stop kind of violently swinging from one side this to the other and kind of center around okay, this sort of guiding philosophy that we're kind of working together towards trying to kind of manifest at institutions nationwide.
Interestingly enough, you mentioned certificates and short form and so forth. In our study that you referenced, or one of the studies you referenced, we just published the 2024 Online College Student Report. And, we do this report every year, and it's primary study. And, every year for the last 3 or 4 years, we have seen the demand and proliferation by learners for certificates increasing, and we're showing an increase again. And it is connected back to skills that employers are demanding and how fast and rapidly things are changing. And particularly when it comes to, the STEM areas. So there's a great opportunity for institutions to take a look at that and partner better with employers on that, and, connect and tie certificates back into the degree programs. So, that they're credit bearing and there's additional value beyond the skills that are gained there. But the popularity of those, they're affordable, they're fast, they kind of check all of the boxes that adult learners have told us for years that, are the most important consideration factors, like how much does it cost, how fast can I get it, and what is my ROI? It's as simple as that. And certificates are definitely a great on-ramp for not only, fulfilling the skills gaps and so forth that exist out there, but also addressing the 40 million plus Americans that are out there with some college and no degree, but are looking to upskill and advance their careers.
Right. Because I think at this point, it's like, just get them something. Like, because, yeah, likely that occurred when they were pursuing like a 4-year that was going to take them 4+ years to complete. So it's like, okay, if we can give them something for the learning that they have completed, or just something that's more useful, yeah, that would, help remedy that situation. Then I think that what you're kind of getting at too, like, I think because, yeah, like you're saying, like the world changing so fast, the skills and the knowledge that are needed changing so quickly, like it could be a great collaboration opportunity in that sort of like, sort of certificate short course kind of space to welcome in like subject matter experts from those external partners and, community partners out there who are like, oh, we'd love to have more people with these kind of skills. It's like, well, could you like help support, development of this, or maybe teach some, like, it just feels like a place where like adjuncts and this and that, like you could sort of bring them in and kind of help get their fingerprints on it, where obviously it's the university's program. They're the ones admitting the students and all that. But I think just that capacity and sort of ability to sort of collaborate with them and bring them in quickly to support that. Because I know sometimes it could always just be a tough task to kind of wrangle the necessary like faculty in. But just the idea of like, okay, well, let's utilize what we have and try to work well with these other folks to, just align it more, or just have it be a great opportunity for these students to get exposure to these external partners.
Yeah, I thought you were leading up to asking me a question about AI.
Natural sort of extension, because I think we've hit on a lot of what I kind of want to get at here. So I think certainly it's something that I've kind of like dipped my feet in to talk about, and I think certainly if you are welcoming in the conversation, I'd be happy to go there, because I think that is specifically one skill base and skill set and kind of knowledge base that there's a lot of development around in terms of opportunities for folks to learn more about it and everything. So yeah, I guess just perspectives on sort of its impact here and just what you're seeing.
The reason I thought of it when you were saying those things is that's an example of where their opportunity exists, for employers who are looking for skills, in that area, including us. Like, we are a scaled digital marketing company and a tech company. We are everything that we do is tech enabled, and AI, the tech on that has come so far so fast that it's deployable now in pretty much everything that we do. So we are, like all employers, we are training ourselves. We are embracing it. We are learning it. We have a lot of nerds and geeks that are absolutely nerding completely out on it and taking it as far as they can. We also talk to, institutions that are trying to figure out, like, how do we fulfill the demand for skills in this area, and what does it look like? And employers are also out there telling us, and it's something that's changing, very, very quickly. But, our advice to institutions on this is to embrace it, be a first mover in embracing this, and pull in your employers to try to figure out what a construct of a certificate or a short course and so forth might look like, and get ahead of it. And then it will evolve very, very quickly from there. But, the message that we have in our conversations is embrace AI. Do not resist it.
Part of that, I'm sure, is going to be like be comfortable with not like, I guess, like failure, but just that idea of like vulnerability or sort of like this is going to be a learning process. And it's one of those things that is only going to get better and easier the more time you kind of give to it and sort of refine it. And I mean, it's been such a rapid advent of it where like I know that, you know, as with many things, it's been sort of like simmering and is now kind of boiling over the idea of like, yeah, this is actually, like you said, deployable in a lot of workspaces now.
I was thinking about this the other day that it seemed like when I was in college and high school, college, and you're in the higher level math courses and you were not, you could not use a calculator. But when I got my first job, the first thing they gave me was a calculator, scientific calculator, and I didn't know how to use the damn thing. And now, if you are a graduate, like when we hire graduates, they are expected to know how to understand AI and to be able to embrace it and to be able to utilize it in some form or fashion. And there's no one coming out in terms of graduates that know how to do this. So we're having to train them ourselves. And my point in saying that is that is one risk to the current higher education construct is if the higher ed industry does not figure it out, employers will. So the perception of value is going to continue to decline.
A good call out there. And I think already some great pieces of advice for enrollment management leaders, try to be first movers in this space and move as quickly as you can to build out your offerings in this area as well. But as we wind down, kind of what other sort of final thought, call to action, reflection do you have on this topic to share to kind of wrap up the episode?
Yeah, I think overall, I would add that, first of all, if you want to know more about us, go to EducationDynamics.com and check us out. But we talk a lot about, we just had our Insights EDU conference with enrollment management leaders and marketing leaders, and some higher ed presidents were there, institution presidents and everything. And the theme of the conference was really talking about serving students and thinking about students as customers. You can call them learners or whatever, but at the end of the day, they're there to learn. They are customers. They're consumers of what universities are providing there. So think of them as customers, especially today. We talk about all of the distractions that are going on around them and the institutions. We're just figuring out how to afford and pay for college is a difficult thing. So thinking about students first and thinking about students institution-wise from a student-centric perspective versus institution-centric would take a big shift to get it off the institution and over to students. But that was a big theme of the conference, and I was happy to see how well it resonated across the audience of leaders from all different types of institutions, large, small, public, and private.
That's kind of the core of it that then will sort of really influence the way that decisions are made and strategies are developed and keep kind of a culture of continuous improvement. I think that's where I think you get kind of static if it's just like, hey, everything works well for us, everything's kind of doing well, and it's like, okay, yeah, now we're in this moment that's sort of like really having that sort of line of thinking just smack right into a wall and kind of it really either not work as well or not work at all, especially for a institution that living on some pretty thin margins, like they are getting into kind of tough spots now. But we'll absolutely have ways to connect with you and connect with Education Dynamics. Like I said, I absolutely recommend checking out their research reports and the one that just came out. I mean, those are ones that I always just love looking into, are amazing kind of just snapshots and ways to kind of just better inform and not be kind of based on sort of anecdotes or anything else. It is it's the hard data. You're getting the straight facts there. So definitely go connect there. Go check out the description for the episode for all that. And just thank you so much, Greg, for hanging out and sharing all you did.
Thank you, Dustin. Appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
The Hired Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances you like all the other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing constantly, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks all designed to empower you to be a better hired professional. Our shows help you find your next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your host. Learn from people like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Dave Kibbolds, and Eddie Francis, as well as so many other of your favorite leaders in higher education. Enrollify is made possible by the support of Element 451, a leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.